Thank you everyone very, very much for being here. We are going to be making a really delicious dish. These are soba noodles with broth that we're going to be making and cooking the noodles in. And we're also going to serve a tofu peanut sauce along with that, as well as some various vegetables that we're going to be putting on top in the end. So this is a really good, like, kind of cozy dish. You know, it can be as vegetable forward as you like, depending on how many vegetables you choose to add. It's got, you know, tons of protein, tons of fiber, lots of great flavor. So before we get into it, I want to remind you, you know, the safety items that I talk about at the top of every class. So make sure you've got a nice sharp knife. You want to make sure your knife is sharp, which reminds me to put on my cut resistant glove. But you want a sharp knife because it gets a better grip on the food. If your knife is too dull, it risks slipping off of the food and cutting your hand instead. So you want to make sure your knife is sharp. Be careful with it. And also make sure all of your produce items, you know, all of them, even the ones with skin that you don't eat, are washed. The reason you want to wash the ones with skin that you don't eat is because you're going to be touching that skin regardless. So you might as well just wash it off. That includes the ginger and the limes. All right, so I'm going to walk us through what we call the plan of work for tonight. So that's the order in which we are completing all of our steps to finish our recipe on time. So the first thing we're going to do is make our stock. That involves prepping the vegetables that are going to go into the stock and actually, you know, putting it on heat and cooking the stock. Then we're going to make our peanut sauce with the tofu. Then we will prep our vegetables for the bowl. Then we strain the vegetables out of the stock, so we just have the liquid remaining, and we cook our noodles in that stock. And then we compose our dish. We put everything together in the end. So any questions at the start before I begin the recipe? Lori's raising her hand. Oh, Lori, you're on mute.
Of course I am. All right, sorry. Is when you strain the vegetables, when you get to that, is there something you can do with those vegetables or just throw them out?
So absolutely, you could definitely do something with the vegetables. So in this particular recipe, if you wanted to keep the vegetables in, you could just cut them a little bit smaller before you put them into the pot, and then you actually don't have to strain at all.
Oh, okay.
Or if you wanted to just have the broth as the recipe calls for, you can strain out those veggies and you can puree them and make sauce with them, or you can throw them into like a rice dish or something like that at a later date. Definitely don't, there's no need to waste them.
Would you want to strain them before you cook the noodles in the broth and then maybe put them back in, or can you cook it all together?
You can cook it all together because the vegetables have been in the broth anyway.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. So, okay. So Tish, I'm gonna ask if you don't mind to spotlight the overhead view because I'm gonna jump into prepping the ingredients for this stuff. So the first thing we have here are shiitake mushrooms. So these are kind of funny looking mushrooms. They look like they grow in the woods, you know, they're not like as perfect as like a portobello or a baby bella. These are kind of funky looking. So I wash these very well because obviously they've got a lot of dirt on them. So what we're gonna do, oops, this is 5 ounces of shiitake mushrooms. And you can see, you know, compared to the size of my hands, that's a good amount of mushrooms in 5 ounces because they obviously don't weigh that much. So in the recipe, I had written to remove the stem altogether, but honestly, all you really need to remove is just the very end of the stem that kind of has more soil still attached to it. As well as you wash it, you kind of can't remove all of it. So I'm just going to cut off the very end of each of these mushrooms and discard that. And then the rest of the mushroom, I'll just chop it up. And we're going to actually multitask. I'm going to start the pot. So I have a big pasta pot right next to me on a burner. I'm gonna put it up to medium heat and add a tablespoon or 2 of canola oil. So let me grab that. And we're just gonna add the ingredients as we prep them into the pot. So we don't waste any time. All right, so I chopped off the end of that mushroom. I'm gonna make sure I do that with all of them. So the way that I found easiest to wash these mushrooms was to fill up a bowl with water and let these mushrooms just kind of float in there and use my fingers to really scrub the tops of the mushrooms like this to make sure I'm, even use like a fingernail to kind of scrape off any of the soil that's stuck to the stem. And then obviously everything you scrape off then also floats in the water. So then you just give them all, you drain out the water and give them a quick rinse. And that's a good way to rinse your mushrooms. That's not necessarily like the best way, the way you have to do it, but it's a way that I find helpful. And I even had a system where I had them float like this if I hadn't washed them yet. And then after I washed them, I turn them upside down. So I know which one is clean. So again, I'm just cutting off the ends, the very ends of all of these mushroom stems. And a lot of times when shiitake mushrooms are used in stock, they sometimes people will use dry mushrooms, dry shiitake, which you can do that as well. But I wanted to show what they look like fresh. So I'm just gonna give these like a rough chop. I honestly could kind of just like put them in a pile because these don't have to look pretty. They're just giving flavor to the stock. So I'm just kind of grouping them together and going on through the pile and slicing them up. So when you make a stock, the way to do it is to, cut up your vegetables, try to open up some of that surface area of the veggies. So it's not just one giant piece. So now I'm just chopping kind of right down the middle. A few more chops and then that'll be sufficient. And once you cut your veggies, you brown them in a pot. So I've got my mushrooms all cut. I have my canola oil already heated up. You can see how liquidy it is. It looks like water inside because it's nice and hot. It's on medium heat. And I'm putting my mushrooms in the pot. They should make a sizzle sound.
Eliza,
Yes.
we have a question. If you use dried shiitake mushrooms, should you rehydrate them before putting in the liquid with the other vegetables?
Good question. It's not necessary because you're adding liquid for the stock anyway. You probably wouldn't put those mushrooms in first. You might want to put the other vegetables in to brown it first. So maybe you would add the dried mushrooms after you've added the other fresh veggies. And then add the dried shiitake at the end. And then you add the water in. So good question. So, all right, I've got my mushrooms sizzling. Once I get all the ingredients in the pot, I'm going to bring it over so you can see what I'm doing in there. But so now I have a carrot. I'm going to grab my peeler. This carrot is already peeled for the most part, but I see some little rough spots here. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm using, this is called a Y peeler because it's shaped like the letter Y. This is a nice, you'll always see me use this in these classes. It's a nice ergonomic tool. Just, you swipe it away from you. It's nice and easy, really like simple to use. Make sure you're giving your mushrooms a stir. I don't want those to burn. If you feel like they're getting too brown, you can turn your heat down a bit. But the mushrooms, the reason we put the mushrooms in first is because mushrooms are, I'm sure you've heard this before, mushrooms have a great flavor that really enhances broths and stocks, and that's the umami flavor. So we want to brown the mushrooms so we can develop the umami flavor. Carrot almost rolled off the counter. Okay, so what we're gonna do, we're not gonna use all of this carrot for the stock because I wanna save some of it for the topping on the bowl. So what I'm gonna do is take the wider end and I'm just gonna slice it. I'm slicing, the slices are maybe 1/4 inch thick. And I'm gonna slice maybe maybe this is like 4 or 5 inches worth. Maybe 4 inches worth. So we don't need a ton, just enough to, carrots give a really good sweet flavor to stock. So I'm gonna throw this in the pot with the mushrooms. So if you're intending already to use your carrots, to leave your carrots in the stock, you might wanna dice them instead, or you can more thinly slice them so that they cook fully in the stock. But so this is what my pan looks like so far. Nice and steamy and hot in there. All right. So the next vegetable I'm gonna do is the scallions. So I've only got 4 scallions here. And what we're actually gonna do is start with the white end, because that's the stronger like onion flavor. So I'm just cutting off the very tip where the roots are and discarding that. And I'm gonna just, I don't need to worry about slicing super thin. Because again, this is just going to give flavor to the stock. Like if you want to keep these in the stock, then you might want to slice it more thinly. But I'm working my way up. I always love when you cut scallions, how it turns into this white to green gradient. Such like a pretty sort of like color fade from light to dark. So I'm only cutting about half the length of the scallions. This I'm setting aside for right now. And I'm gonna put my scallions into the pot and stir those in. Giving it a stir. So here's my pot now. It's got the scallions in there as well. Okay, so in the pot we have mushrooms, carrots, and scallions. Next, we have ginger. This is a very wide piece of ginger, so I'm not going to use all of this, but ginger skin, the best or the quickest, I think, and safest way to peel ginger is to actually just use a spoon. You don't even need to worry about that sharp peeler because of all of the angles of the ginger. It can be kind of not the safest. You might, cut your finger instead. So the skin on ginger is so delicate and thin that all you have to do is just rub a spoon on it and it comes right off. If you have any stubborn parts, you can chop those off with your knife. But ginger, again, so all these ingredients we are adding to the stock for a particular reason. So ginger adds a really aromatic, sort of spicy flavor to this stock. The carrots added sweet flavor. The mushrooms were an earthy umami flavor. And the scallions, again, are another aromatic flavor. It's kind of hard to describe what an onion brings to, what does an onion taste like? But if you're thinking about how an onion's flavor complements the other ingredients, we have sweet, we have earthy, we have spicy, and we have like the aromatic earthiness of an onion. So all the ingredients bring different things to this, different components to the stock. So this part on the end is a little bit hard to peel, so I'm actually just gonna chop that right off. And I don't really need the rest of this. We don't need a ton of ginger in here. So I'm gonna slice this like I did the carrot. About a 1/4 inch thick. And I'll give it another rough chop just to expose as much surface area to the pan for browning purposes as we can. When you brown ingredients in a pot, it develops their flavor more. So I'm putting this in the pot. That ginger, for those of you that want to keep your vegetables in the stock, that ginger is gonna be pretty strong of a flavor. So maybe you wanna cut your ginger a different way so you can sort of, like fish it out and not leave it in your stock. So here's what my pot is looking like now. I've got some brown pieces stuck to the bottom, but no worry, anyone who's been in these classes before knows that we're gonna deglaze this pan. So I'll explain that when we get there. So only one more ingredient to go into our stock, and that is garlic. So I'm just gonna cut off this root end. And again, if you're gonna be leaving your veggies in your stock, you might want to, we're not gonna be mincing this garlic or anything. All we're doing is crushing it. So I've got the side of my knife, very carefully putting my weight on it and crushing it. So it only broke into a few pieces. So you might wanna fish these out if you're gonna be keeping your vegetables in your stock. Unless you really love a surprise garlic chunk, then you can leave it in. All right. So now all of the ingredients are in the stock. I'm gonna try to reorganize myself here. And I'm gonna bring the pan over so you can see what I'm working on. Okay, slowly working my way over. Oop, I think my burner is too. Let me adjust my camera 1 second. Okay. There we go. Now you can see my pot. So we're definitely developing flavor here. So this has probably been on the heat. Let's see, it's 5:51. So it's been what, maybe 10, 15 minutes? And I can smell this. I can smell the ginger, I can smell the scallions, the mushrooms for sure. This is super fragrant. So since I've got all of this stuff stuck to the bottom and the veggies are browned a little bit, I'm gonna add my water. So the amount of water in the recipe for you all is 1 3/4 cups. So when you first add that water, you should hear the sizzle. And I'm using my spoon here to scrape the brown off of the bottom of the pan. That brown flavor was trapped and stuck to the pan, but once we add the water, we can release the flavor back into the dish. It's kind of a little bit tricky to make sure that you don't burn your vegetables, because if what's stuck to the bottom of the pan is all black, then your broth is gonna end up tasting burnt. So we
So,
just wanna-
Eliza, I'm sorry to interrupt. Is it 1 3/4 cups or quarts
1
of
3/4
water?
quarts. I don't know what I said. 1 3/4 quarts.
Okay, so that's almost 4 cups? Is that
1 quart is 4 cups, so this is actually 7 cups.
7 cups? Okay.
Yes. So I have to get, I'm using cups, actual cups to measure, so I just have to fill up a little bit more. Okay. And the reason we're using the amount of water we're using is because this will, you know, once a little bit of it will kind of like evaporate out as we cook. But once we're done, this should leave us with plenty of broth to eat with the noodles in the bowls, should you choose. It also gives us broth to add to thin out our peanut sauce if we would like to. So we have plenty of broth here. And actually, I'm calling it broth. People use broth and stock interchangeably, but technically they're different. This is technically a stock. Stock is when you're just steeping your ingredients to get the flavor from the ingredients themselves without adding salt. Broth has salt added. That's the primary difference. So I'm now bringing this to high heat because I want to bring this up to a boil. And to make that go faster, I'm going to put a lid on. So anytime you make stock, you want to brown first, then deglaze your pan, then bring it up to a boil, then reduce it to a simmer. That's what we're doing. So right now I'm bringing it up to a boil. And I've moved it out of the way because that's going to be some inactive cooking now. So we're still cooking our broth, but we don't need to be actively doing anything to it. All right, so the next thing we're going to make is our peanut sauce. I'm very excited for this. Love peanut sauce. And I brought my NutriBullet blender from home to make this. So this is another modification I made to the original recipe. I had originally said to puree the tofu separately and then whisk all of your other ingredients and mix it together. But honestly, it can all go into the blender at the same time. So I'm gonna adjust my camera again, bring it down a little closer. Okay. So I wanted to show you the silken tofu. I wrote my name on it so nobody in our kitchen took it by accident. So silken tofu, I'm gonna cut this open. So there's there's liquid in here, so you have to be careful you don't spill it everywhere. But I'm cutting through the plastic on the top. Silken tofu, it's called that because it's very, very smooth like silk. It's honestly like custard. You can scoop it like a custard. So
Eliza, we have one more
Yes.
question.
Yes.
Can you use a food processor instead of a blender for the sauce?
Yes, you can. Because the silken tofu is so delicate, it will be totally fine in a food processor. So you can see, I just scooped that out like custard. This is so delicate. So yes, a food processor would be fine. It's possible that it may not make it quite as smooth, but it will completely do the trick. So I'm scooping this out. This recipe calls for, let's see, I'm actually gonna make not as much as all of you because I don't want to waste it on my end. So the recipe that you all have to make 4 servings is a half a block of silken tofu. So I'm only gonna do a quarter block here. But this honestly scoops like yogurt. It scoops specifically like Yoplait yogurt. If you know what that brand of yogurt is like. That's what this silken tofu looks like. I'm gonna add just a little bit, like a tablespoon of water to help thin it out a little bit. I can honestly use the liquid from the tofu pack. I'll drip some of that in there, but I'm gonna need a bit more than that. So I'm gonna add a little bit in the sink. And we have other liquid in this sauce, so I don't want to do too much. How long does the remaining tofu in the container stay good in the fridge? So I would say anytime you open up a container like this, you would want to eat it within a week, 5 to 7 days. So if you wanted to just make a bigger batch of peanut sauce and put it in your fridge, you can totally do that. Or put it in your freezer rather, I meant to say. Okay, so this is just the silken tofu. So in my blender, my phone, there we go. The NutriSlice blend, or not NutriSlice, NutriBullet blender, you kind of just push down on it and it blends. So hopefully Zoom filters out this noise, but here we go. Okay. I'm not sure if my Wi-Fi is lagging. I'm sorry if it is, but this is very, very pureed right now. This is just the tofu. Shoot, I feel like my phone is lagging. I'm not sure if it is on your end. But all I have in here is the silken tofu. But now I'm going to add the other peanut sauce ingredients into this blender container. So peanut butter, we have peanut butter here. This is creamy peanut butter. You could do salted or unsalted. And your recipe calls for half a cup of peanut butter. I'm doing half that amount. So scooping that in. Then we've got sriracha. So this is Tabasco brand, but it's sriracha. And I'm just gonna kind of eyeball it. Your recipe calls for 2 teaspoons, mine calls for 1. So I don't want it to be crazy spicy, so I'm not gonna do too much. Then we've got soy sauce. Again, you can do regular soy sauce, you can do low sodium soy sauce, whatever you prefer. This is, you are gonna do 2 tablespoons for the recipe that I gave you. So we've got pureed tofu, peanut butter, hot sauce, and soy sauce. That's all that's in here so far. Then we have rice wine vinegar. This is clear, just clear vinegar. Obviously, it's going to add some acidity to the sauce. Your recipe calls for 1 tablespoon plus 1 teaspoon, aka 4 teaspoons, if you'd rather do it that way. So we've added our rice wine vinegar. I'll review all the amounts after I add this last toasted sesame oil. So this is, let's see, toasted sesame oil is going to be the same amount as the rice wine vinegar. 1 tablespoon plus 1 teaspoon. So dumping that in. All right, so what we have in here is half a block of silken tofu pureed. We've got a half a cup of peanut butter. We have 2 teaspoons sriracha, 1 tablespoon plus 1 teaspoon of rice wine vinegar, 1 tablespoon plus 1 teaspoon of toasted sesame oil, and 2 tablespoons of soy sauce. The final ingredient for this is lime juice. So what I'm gonna do, like we always do in this class, anytime we need to juice citrus, before we juice it, 1 hand over the other and roll it back and forth. You want to really put your weight into it. You want to push and add pressure. All right, you want it to feel like a nice ripe soft avocado. And I'm going to use my knife here and cut it in half so we can juice it. We're probably going to want to do the juice of an entire lime. But okay, so I've got my lime in here. You'll notice I didn't put it in this way, like it seems like it should go. I instead turned it around and put the cut side facing out. So we're juicing the lime by inverting its shape. And juicing it right into the, you can't see, but juicing it right into the blender here. I might start with just a half. I also want to check on my stock. But all right, so here's the sauce. I'm going to blend all of that together. Here we go. Okay, so here's the time when we have to taste it and see what we think. So it should be, ooh, I smell the soy sauce, I smell the sesame oil. So it's like a light colored, like not the color of peanut butter, but like a lighter tan color. All right, let me get a clean spoon. So you can modify this with any of the ingredients we just added. You can add more of them if you'd like. So I'm going to give it a taste. Wow, that's so good. It's because of this, the soy sauce, it's really salty already. So you probably won't need to add any more salt. And I think the lime juice amount was fine. If you want to add more lime juice, you can. But I'm going to set this aside because we're good with it for now. But let's see how this looks. I mean, it's definitely, it probably did get to a boil when I wasn't looking because it's got like foamy bubbles and stuff, which is good. This smells absolutely incredible. So I'm going to keep that going on the burner. And now we're going to prep our vegetables. I'll bring this overhead a bit closer again. We're going to prep our vegetables for the toppings of this dish. So let me check in with everybody cooking along at home, see how you're doing. Any questions? All good?
Are we
Well,
keeping the fire on high, or do we bring it down to a simmer yet?
If it's been boiling, then you can turn it down to like a medium low
Okay,
and give it a stir just for good measure. And you can keep your lid on it because that will help to like make sure you don't lose too much liquid. If you're concerned about there being too much liquid or about maybe you didn't get enough browning in your dish before you put the water in, then you could remove the lid to try to concentrate the flavor by evaporating more of the liquid. Does that make sense?
Eliza, can that peanut sauce be frozen?
Yes, you would probably want to like maybe like doctor it up a bit more or put it back in the blender
I
to
see.
process it again before
I
you
see.
use it again.
Okay.
But yes, it can be.
How about after, if you mix it with all the noodles and stuff, could you freeze it afterwards like that?
With the noodles, truthfully, I haven't tried that. So
Okay.
if you try it, let me know.
Okay, I will.
The noodles, I'm not sure how well those would hold frozen.
Mm,
And
mm.
if you reheat them, they might not hold together. They might kind of fall apart.
Oh, okay. I didn't think of that. All right, thank you.
Yeah, but let me know if you try that. But okay, so we've got, this is bok choy. Bok choy, oftentimes, at least the way we serve it here on campus in our cafeterias, we often have baby bok choy. So not the size of my hand, but much smaller. And it gets steamed or braised and is left whole. But what we're actually going to do for this is kind of cut it up like lettuce. But I wanted to talk about bok choy for a moment. Bok choy is a type of cabbage, and it's also a cruciferous vegetable. The reason I'm showing you the underside of this is because cruciferous vegetables have, this only has 1, 2, 3 because it's a smaller head, but there were more leaves here, you can tell because they were broken off. The way the leaves grow from the stalk, cruciferous vegetables have a cross. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 cruciferous in cross. So that's just a fun fact about cruciferous vegetables. Cabbage, kale, Brussels sprouts. So I'm breaking the leaves off of this center here. Broccoli and cauliflower, those are also cruciferous vegetables. What you can do if you'd like, we're breaking the big leaves off. And then when you get down toward the center, you end up with this really cute little heart. If you want to leave the heart intact, then you can use that as a garnish, depending on how big or small it is. So I did wash these. They have some brown specks on them, which is just like a natural discoloration, nothing to be concerned about. But you do want to make sure you wash your leaves very well. And I'm kind of just like stacking them on top of each other as best as I can. And I'm gonna put them in a position where they're not gonna roll away. So I'm putting the flatter part down. And I'm gonna just cut it into strips. If you have a different way you would like to cut these, then go for it. But I think this is nice because when you have a noodle dish, it's nice to have your vegetables sort of mimic the shape of the noodles. Like long skinny pieces. And bok choy, because it's a cabbage, these stalks are super nice and crunchy. They add a really nice crunchy texture. So even though the shape is not too different from the noodles, the texture is very different. And then when you get down to the very bottom, it starts to get a little, you know, like not the nicest pieces. So you don't have to use those last bits. But here we've got some nice, the pieces of the bok choy from the stalk, and we also have the leafy parts. So we've got some nice bok choy that we're gonna put as a topping. I'm gonna push that off to the side. We're also going to use our carrot now. So we've got this carrot left. We probably won't use, this is a decent sized carrot. I won't use all of this. But what we're gonna do is something different than how we cut it before. So I think I'll probably only use like half of this. So I'm gonna cut it lengthwise. In half lengthwise, flip it to the flat side. And then lengthwise in half again. So I've quartered the carrot lengthwise. And then I'm gonna use my peeler again, my wide peeler, to cut this into skinny ribbons. And I'm just gonna, I can lean my carrot on the cutting board to give me a bit more, leverage and resistance. The reason I cut this into quarters before doing the peeling was because I wanted it to be skinnier, more narrow carrot ribbons. If we left the carrot whole, like this, and peeled it, it would at first be skinny, but then the pieces get wider and wider and wider, which is totally fine. You can do that as well. But again, like I said, I'm trying to mimic the shape of the noodles. So it's kind of tricky because you don't want to cut all the way up and hurt your finger. So when you get down to a part where you can't really peel it much anymore, then you have a snack. You can eat this as a snack while you prepare your food. All right. So I've got some carrot there. I'm going to do some more here. And I'm kind of turning the carrot quarter as I go to make sure the pieces don't get too thick. So the reason we're doing it this way, carrots are obviously very hard and crunchy, and we're not cooking these carrots. The carrots that are in the stock are being cooked, but these carrots we're not cooking. So having a really hard, crunchy, thick carrot in your noodles is kind of like disruptive to the experience of eating the noodles. We have our crunchy bok choy, but this is crunchy like a piece of celery, not crunchy like a carrot that actually like takes some force to chomp down on. So we don't want the carrot pieces to be too hard and crunchy. We want them to be nice and delicate like this. All right, so we've got our bok choy prepared. We have our carrot prepared. Now I'm going to cut the radish. So we're doing a time check. It's 6:15. So I think what I might do before I cut the radish is do the next step with the stock. So Tish, if you don't mind adding my spotlight to the overhead, then I can show everybody what I'm working on with the stock. Okay, hi everybody. So, all right, the stock looks awesome. I'm gonna show it to you here. All right, so I just removed it from the burner. So it was bubbly, the bubbles just died off because it's not on the heat at the moment. But you'll see the color of this liquid. I can use like a light colored spoon so you can see it. But you want to taste it. The color of this liquid is no longer clear. This is no longer just water. It's absorbed a lot of the flavors from the vegetables. So I'm going to give it a taste. Yeah, the ginger is really present in there. The scallions, definitely some umami in there. But because this is stock, not broth, there's no salty flavor. If you would like to add salt, you can. However, keep in mind how salty your peanut sauce was. You can always add more salt later, but you can't take away. I will not be adding salt to this. I can add more soy sauce or add more peanut sauce or whatever later if I'd like. I will not be adding salt to this because I don't want to overdo it with the salt. So, our next step for the stock, I've got a big bowl here. You can also use another pot or any kind of big container. And I've got a strainer that I'm putting inside. I'm gonna be removing my vegetables from the stock by straining them through here and capturing the rest of the stock in the bowl. Okay, so I'm gonna do that very carefully. Hot. Carefully, you don't steam burn your arms. So again, those of you that want to save your veggies, you don't have to do this step. Unless you want to fish out your ginger, which this is ginger here, this is a big piece of garlic. So you could remove the ginger and garlic and keep the rest of your veggies in here if you'd like to. But what I'm doing here is picking up my strainer. I'm using the back of a spoon to just try to like press out any liquid that was absorbed into these veggies because I want all that flavor into the dish. All right, especially the mushrooms. The mushrooms absorb the most liquid out of all of the veggies here. All right, so I'm setting this aside. I'm gonna put it in here. Okay. And now I've got all of this stock that I'm actually gonna pour right back into my pot because now we're gonna cook the veggie or cook the noodles. So I'm pouring this very slowly. There was at the end pouring the stock in, there was a little bit of sediment. So like pieces of the vegetables came through completely fine. Doesn't have to be perfectly clear. So yeah, now we've got this stock where we strained out our veggies. Oh, there's still a piece of ginger in there that was hiding. Okay. Those of you at home doing okay? Following along, I hope. Let me know if you need me to slow down. But I've got my stock back in the pot. And now I'm going to add my noodles while we prepare the rest of the veggies. So before I add the noodles, I'm bringing my stock back to a boil. To make that go faster, I'm going to trap the heat with my lid. So I'm putting a lid on there. I've got it on high and it's coming to a boil. My burner goes really fast, so it's probably going to come to a boil pretty quickly. But I also wanted to talk to you about soba noodles. So what we're making, the types of noodles the type of noodles that we're using are soba noodles. So these are, I'll bring some of them out here so you can see. Soba noodles are made from buckwheat. Honestly, it's funny, like the texture on these, they look like they're just like strips of paper. And they're very delicate, obviously, like they don't take a lot of force to break, less force than the typical piece of pasta. And made from buckwheat, but the name is kind of a misleading name. Buckwheat is actually a gluten-free grain. So anyone that can't have gluten can have soba noodles. And soba noodles are an excellent source. They're a whole grain. The buckwheat is not refined in any way. It's just ground into powder. And then it's used to make this pasta. So buckwheat has high protein, high fiber because it's a whole grain. So definitely good nutrition in these noodles. And those of you cooking along at home, if you're making the 4 servings that the recipe calls for, that package that I had was 8.8 ounces. So that's what I estimated for your recipe. I'm making half that amount. The noodles came wrapped in these like paper little bundles, which is cute. So my stock is still coming to a boil, so I'm not gonna add my noodles in just yet, but I'll put them to the side. And they only take 3 minutes to cook because they're delicate. More, like I said, more delicate than a typical pasta. They only take 3 minutes to cook. It's really fast. So it's 6:22 now, but we're gonna be good with the noodles, at least. At least the noodles will be cooked on time. Okay, so I'm gonna continue with prepping the veggies. So this is a red radish. So we're gonna cut this into matchsticks. Again, trying to mimic the long skinny noodle shape. You could cut it a different way. You could just thinly slice it if you'd like. You can use your wide peeler. to thinly slice it, but I'm gonna cut this into little skinny matchsticks. So I'll show you how I'm gonna do that. So, let's see. First thing I'm gonna do is cut it lengthwise because I wanna get a flat surface. Radishes are so beautiful. Red radishes have this like fuchsia outside and then perfectly white on the inside. So we've got the flat part facing down. I'm gonna move this camera a bit closer, so hopefully you can see a little better. All right, I'm gonna cut the ends off just because it's kind of like the root left on there. That's okay. All right. So what I'm gonna do to cut matchsticks is put my knife right up against the edge. The tip of my knife is down on the cutting board and I'm rocking my knife into very, very thin slices. I'm going all the way over to the outer edge. Oh, looks like my stock is boiling now, so I'm taking my lid off. I'm adding my noodles in. When you add your noodles, make sure you give them a stir so they're fully submerged. And you leave the heat on high. Right, so yeah, this only takes 3 minutes. So I'm looking at the time right now, 6:24, I just added them. 6:27, they should be done. All right, so we've got our radish pieces here. I'm kind of trying to like line them up, generally going in the same direction. And then again, thinly slice into strips. I'm gonna show you a slightly different method with the other half of this radish. But we have these cute little matchsticks. So put those to the side. The only difference with this method is that I'm really trying to prevent the pieces of the radish on the cut side from sticking to my knife. I'm trying to keep them all in one place, but it's tricky. Definitely easier when you have a cut resistant glove on your hand, so you don't have to worry about that. Very slowly. Okay, so I'll show you now that I've got these sliced pieces, they're sliced and they're all in a row. I'm gonna tilt them over, tip them over. Our executive chef here says you shingle them and then you slice. So they're all kind of stuck to each other. They're all nice and organized. All right, and then you have, again, your cute little matchsticks. All right, so time 6:26. So our radishes are ready. The last ingredient I'm gonna prep is the peanuts. I have some roasted, ooh, I just bumped the camera, sorry. I have some roasted peanuts, and I'm just gonna give those a really quick chop. You can crush them with the side of your knife if you'd like. That's a little bit unsafe, depending on how slippery your work surface is, but you can also just chop, that's totally fine. Rough chop, you don't wanna like mince them. You wanna have still some, maybe no whole pieces, but some like halves would be totally fine. So that's all we have to do for the peanuts. My phone is frozen, there we go, okay. All right, pushing the peanuts to the side. And in your recipe, if you were able to find mung bean sprouts, the store didn't have them and our chef ordered them to be delivered here and they didn't come, so that's unfortunate, but they're a nice, crunchy, long, skinny topping you can have. So I'm gonna test a noodle. I have gloves on, so I'm not gonna burn myself. But if you don't have gloves, then careful you don't burn yourself. Make sure it's done. Yeah, perfect. All right. Heat goes off. So that was 3 minutes. Super, super fast. I'll show you. So here are the noodles in the stock here. So what we're actually gonna do, rather than like strain out the pasta and get rid of the liquid, like you might do if you're cooking pasta like Italian style, we wanna save that broth, obviously. So I'm gonna get a bowl and I'm gonna scoop the noodles into the bowl. Okay, let me push these toppings out of the way, so. There we go. Okay. So I've got one of these pasta spider tools, whatever you call it. Oops. There we go. So it helps to scoop the noodles out. So I'm scooping them. It's okay if there's still some stock. You don't have to like, you know, really let all the liquid drip off because you want some liquid. But I'm scooping as many noodles as I can get into this bowl. And then we're gonna add our peanut sauce to the bowl. So it's 6:29 now. So all that's left is tossing this with the peanut sauce and plating up. That's it. So you could, an alternative way of doing this would be to, rather than tossing this with the peanut sauce, you could just put the noodles and the stock into a bowl. And you could pour your peanut sauce over it as a topping. But I'm gonna toss it all together. So I didn't use all of my peanut sauce. I still have some left just in case I want an additional garnish. And I've got some tongs because that's a helpful tool for this. So because that peanut sauce is nice and smooth, this coats very, very easily. This smells so good. The heat from the soba noodles is now making the peanut sauce scent even stronger. So it's just a quick coat. And that's all. And now I'm gonna start plating. So I've got one of these bowl plate things. This is a bit more shallow than I would typically like, but this is what we have available. You could serve it in like a normal bowl if you'd prefer. But, all right, so I'm gonna try to plate this up in an appealing way. So when you do long noodles, you can kind of like twist it. I wanna do like 2 noodle piles. Twist it around. There we go. So we've got our noodles. And I'm gonna take a ladle and scoop some of the broth or stock. I keep saying broth. Put stock around it. Add as much or as little as you'd like. And then we've got all of our toppings. So I'm gonna do I'll do little pieces. Got my bok choy. The more like green lettucey pieces and the little crunchy parts. I'll kind of sprinkle some around there too. Then we've got our carrot ribbons. You can put it on top, you can lean it against the side, you can sprinkle it around, however you'd like to do it. All right, then we have our really cute radish matchsticks. Again, put some on the side, put it on top. However you'd like to garnish it. And we have our chopped peanuts. Sprinkle some of those on top. And let's see, am I missing anything? Oh, I got some some red chili flakes if you want a little bit of spice. If the peanut sauce was not too spicy to you, you can add red peanut flakes. You can also add sesame seeds or black sesame, really makes this pop. The color, the black color really stands out. You can add additional soy sauce, additional sesame oil. You can add more peanut sauce, whatever you'd like, more hot sauce. And if you were able to get, oh, the scallions, I forgot to do the scallions. If you were able to get mung bean sprouts, then you should add those as well. Forgot to chop our scallions, so I'm gonna do a little bit, really skinny slices for garnish. Here we go. Scallions add a really nice finishing flavor to this dish here. So these are
Looks
our
beautiful.
noodles. So how's everyone doing at home? I know we're a little bit over, but I'm gonna switch to the gallery view so I can see everybody. If you want to share what you've made, those of you at home. All right, then, let's see.
Well, I ended up with a lot of extra peanut sauce. Can
Yeah.
you see that? Can you see that?
Yeah. Nice.
Oh,
But I did end up with like a lot of peanut sauce, and I
I
feel
mean-
like not enough noodles. Like these were buckwheat and brown rice noodles, so maybe I bought the wrong kind.
Okay, I mean, soba noodles are not something that you see in every grocery store, so
Yeah.
if that's what they had, then that's
Yeah.
it is what it is. But the peanut sauce, definitely, the peanut sauce is like the big flavor in this dish, so you can go heavier with the peanut sauce.
Okay, all right.
Don't shy away from that, for sure, and you can drizzle extra on top if you'd like to. Latrice, how are you doing at home?
I think I'm doing all right.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can show it. I don't know if I can.
Okay, let's see.
Can you see that?
I can say, oh, yeah.
oh, beautiful.
Sort of.
Kind of. Yeah. I mean, it got all the right colors and everything. That looks awesome. Nice. So I know we're 5 minutes over, but does anybody have any questions, or how would you make this differently?
I was thinking you could
Sauce
put
is really good.
the sauce is good.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really light. It's not, like a heavy peanut flavor.
Right.
I was thinking you could put a shredded chicken on this as you were
Yeah,
making it.
totally. Yeah, and if it's pulled chicken, then it's
That's what I mean, like a
long,
pulled
skinny-
chicken that's
yeah,
thrown on top.
that would be great. That would be great.
And then would you save the stock broth, whatever it's called, to use just so you can make soup afterwards, or just put dumplings in it or something?
Totally. Or you can just like use it in place of water when you cook any type of grain. I would do that.
Mm.
That you can definitely put.
Oh, I bet that would be good. That's really good.
Yeah, super good. But yeah, you can add like more broth or stock than I've added, because if you want it to be more like soupy, more like a ramen, you can do that too and serve it in like a higher, more narrow bowl instead of a low wide bowl. So yeah, you can definitely do more stock in your dish, or you can use it for other things as well.
So pretty.
Yeah,
Use
I mean, I feel like
chickpeas.
the red from the radish, the green, the orange, it's all so nice. Love it.
In my sauce, I used chickpeas instead of tofu.
Oh, nice.
Oh.
How did the texture come out?
Really creamy. I don't know
Awesome.
if you can see that.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
It looks just
Yeah.
like mine. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, someone said always looking for a great peanut sauce recipe. Yeah, tofu is just a great way, especially silken tofu, because it's so smooth. It's a great way to just like boost the protein in a dish, in like a plant-based dish.
So one thing is you didn't drain the tofu before you used it. Doesn't matter, I guess?
No, so silken tofu, honestly, it doesn't even have that much liquid, like excess liquid in the container, because the tofu itself has more water.
Okay.
It's so smooth and silky that the water content is higher than like regular tofu. Yeah, that's a good question.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it literally, this tofu consistency is literally like custard. It's so smooth. It cuts, like literally it's
Yeah.
exactly like Yoplait yogurt. That's, I can't think of a better way. If you've ever had that brand of yogurt, that's exactly what the consistency is like. Or like flan. Like that's
Yeah.
exactly what the
It does
consistency.
look like flan. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Okay, well, I won't keep you any longer, but I appreciate you all so much for being here. Thank you for staying a bit longer. I hope those of you that cooked enjoy your dinner, hope your families enjoy it, and I hope to see you next time. Thank you so
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank
Glad to
you.
see everyone.
Bye-bye.
Have a great night.
Thank you.
Good night.